Most gamers think AAA games are the only ones worth your money. But honestly, some of the best experiences I've had didn't come from billion-dollar studios at all. They came from these hidden gems that most people scroll past without even noticing. And the crazy part is, a lot of them end up feeling more memorable, more emotional, and sometimes even more fun than the big releases everyone talks about every year. So in this video, we're going through 12 hidden games that seriously deserve more love. Games that might have slipped under your radar, but once you play them, you start wondering how they aren't talked about more. Some are gritty, some are emotional, some are just pure gameplay magic. But all of them are worth your time in one way or another. And yeah, by the end, you might even question if AAA games are really doing enough these days. Starting with A Plague Tale: Innocence. And this one honestly feels like one of those games that quietly hits you harder than you expect. On the surface, it looks like a simple stealth adventure set in a plague-ridden world, but the moment you start playing, it becomes way more personal. You're following Amisha and her little brother Hugo, and it's not just about survival, it's about how far you're willing to go to protect someone you care about in a world that feels completely broken. What really sticks with you is the atmosphere. It's heavy, dark, and constantly tense, especially when those rat swarms show up. And trust me, those moments are not just scary. They feel overwhelming in a way most AA games don't even try to do anymore. The gameplay is simple, but it works because the story carries everything. You're not playing it for flashy combat or open-world freedom, you're playing it because you actually want to see what happens to these characters. And by the time you start getting comfortable, the game reminds you it's not here to make you comfortable at all.
Well, we got out.
So we can leave now, right?
If they don't find us again.
But you have your sling. You can protect us.
GreedFall is one of those games that instantly gives you that classic RPG vibe, like it's pulling inspiration from older BioWare-style adventures, but trying to do its own thing at the same time. You land in this strange island full of magic, politics, and tension between different factions, and right away, it feels like every decision you make actually matters in some way, even when you're not fully sure how deep the consequences go. What makes it stand out is the freedom in how you approach situations. You can talk your way through problems, sneak around them, or just go in with swords and spells. It's not perfect, and you can feel the budget in some areas, but there's a charm to it that keeps pulling you forward. The world feels alive in a rough, unpolished way, like it's trying to be bigger than what it technically is, and honestly, the more you play it, the more it grows on you. It's not trying to be a flashy AAA blockbuster, it's more like a hidden RPG that rewards patience and curiosity, and that's exactly why it deserves more attention than it got. The Surge 2 is one of those games that doesn't really try to hold your hand at all, and honestly, that's exactly what makes it interesting. From the moment you step into this broken, cyberpunk-style city, everything feels hostile. Enemies don't wait for you to get comfortable, the world doesn't explain much, and you're kind of thrown into survival mode right away. What stands out the most is the combat system. It's slow, heavy, and super punishing if you get careless, but at the same time, it's incredibly satisfying once it clicks. You're targeting specific body parts in fights, trying to break armor, and deciding what loot you want to risk your life for mid-battle. It's intense in a very focused way, like every encounter actually matters, instead of just being filler fights. And yeah, it's not a perfect game. It can feel rough around the edges, sometimes even frustrating, but there's something addictive about pushing through that difficulty and slowly getting stronger in a world that clearly doesn't want you to win. Kingdom Come. Deliverance is one of those games that doesn't care if you're ready for it or not. It just drops you into a medieval world and says, figure it out. And honestly, that's what makes it so different from most RPGs out there. There's no chosen one energy here, no magical powers, just a regular guy trying to survive in a world that feels brutally realistic. At the start, even basic things feel hard. You're not a skilled warrior, you miss attacks, you struggle with combat, and even reading or learning skills takes time, but that's the point. The game slowly turns you into someone capable, and that growth feels earned in a way most games don't even attempt anymore. Every sword fight feels tense because one mistake can completely ruin you, and the world itself is what really sells it. It's grounded, historical, and full of little details that make it feel alive. From conversations with NPCs to the way quests unfold, everything feels like it has weight. It's not flashy, it's not fast, but it pulls you in with its realism and doesn't let go once you start understanding its rhythm. Days Gone is one of those games that people really misunderstood at launch, but when you actually spend time with it, it starts hitting way differently. At first, it feels like a standard open-world zombie survival game, but the longer you stay in it, the more it becomes about isolation, survival, and just trying to hold yourself together in a world that's completely fallen apart. You play as Deacon, and what makes the experience stand out is how grounded everything feels. The bike isn't just transportation, it's your lifeline. You're constantly managing fuel, planning routes, and hoping you don't get stuck in the middle of nowhere when things go wrong. And things do go wrong. A lot. Especially when a horde shows up out of nowhere and suddenly the whole screen turns into pure chaos. But what really surprised people is how emotional the story actually gets. It starts slow, even a bit rough, but as you push through, it builds into something more personal and heavy than you'd expect from a zombie game. It's not perfect, but it's one of those games that gets better the more time you give it, and that's why it stayed in people's minds long after release. Mad Max is one of those games that flew completely under the radar for most players, which is honestly kind of crazy when you see how well it captures its world. From the moment you step into that wasteland, it just feels brutal, empty, and strangely alive at the same time. There's sand, wreckage, silence, and then suddenly chaos hits out of nowhere. What really makes this game stand out is the car combat. The magnum opus isn't just a vehicle, it becomes your identity out there. Every upgrade actually feels meaningful because you can physically feel the difference when you're smashing through enemy convoys or barely surviving a chase with everything falling apart around you. It's messy in the best way possible. And yeah, the story isn't groundbreaking, but it doesn't really need to be. The world itself does most of the talking. You're just surviving, upgrading, and slowly turning into a legend in a place that doesn't care if you live or die. It's simple, but that simplicity is exactly what makes it so addictive once it clicks. Prey is one of those games that quietly messes with your expectations from the very beginning. You wake up thinking it's a normal sci-fi setup, but within minutes, you realize nothing on this space station can really be trusted, not even the environment itself. And that feeling of uncertainty just keeps growing the more you explore. What makes Prey so special is how much freedom it gives you without shouting about it. You can approach situations in so many different ways. Hack doors, sneak through vents, use tools creatively, or just improvise when everything goes wrong. The game doesn't always tell you the right answer, it just gives you systems and lets you figure it out. And honestly, that's where it shines the most. The tension also stays consistent in a really clever way. You never fully feel safe, even when things seem quiet. There's always that thought in your mind that something could be watching you or waiting in the next room. It's not about jump scares, it's more about constant paranoia that slowly builds as you progress. And the more you understand its world, the more you appreciate how detailed and smartly designed it actually is. Prey isn't loud or flashy, but it's one of those games that rewards curiosity in a way most modern games don't even attempt anymore. Hellblade. Senua's Sacrifice is not really the kind of game you play in a normal way, it's more like you experience it. From the very first moments, you can tell this is going to be different. The sound design alone pulls you into Senua's mind, and it doesn't let you out easily. What hits the hardest is how the game represents mental struggle. The voices in her head aren't just background noise. They constantly react, argue, warn, and confuse you. Sometimes they help, sometimes they make you doubt everything you're doing. And as a player, you start feeling that pressure too. It's unsettling in a very intentional way. The combat is simple, but it doesn't need to be complex. It's more about emotion and timing than flashy mechanics. Every encounter feels tense, like you're fighting through something heavier than just enemies on screen. And visually, the game just looks stunning in a grounded, almost haunting way. What really stays with you, though, is the emotional weight. This isn't a game that tries to entertain you in a traditional sense. It tells a deeply personal story and makes you sit with it. And by the end, it doesn't just feel like you finished a game, it feels like you went through something. The Evil Within 2 is one of those horror games that doesn't just rely on jump scares, it slowly builds this uncomfortable feeling that something is always off. From the moment you step into Union, it looks almost normal at first, like a small town you could actually walk around in. But the more you explore, the more it starts to feel wrong in ways you can't fully explain. What really makes it stand out compared to the first game is the freedom. You're not constantly locked into tight corridors anymore. You can explore, scavenge, and decide how you want to approach situations. That shift actually makes it more tense in some ways because now you're responsible for what you find, and sometimes what you find is definitely not pleasant. The enemies also feel more disturbing than scary in a traditional sense. It's not just about fighting monsters, it's about how unpredictable everything is. One moment you feel in control, and the next moment the game completely flips the situation on you without warning. And then there's the story, which slowly pulls you into Sebastian's personal struggle while everything around him keeps falling apart. It's darker, more emotional, and surprisingly grounded for a horror game. By the time you're deep into it, you're not just trying to survive the world, you're trying to understand what's even real anymore. Sleeping Dogs is one of those games that instantly surprises you the moment you actually give it a chance. On paper, it sounds like another open-world crime game, but the way it blends undercover cop drama with brutal street-level action makes it feel completely different from the usual GTA-style formula. What really pulls you in is the combat. It's fast, close, and incredibly satisfying. Every fight feels personal because you're not just shooting from a distance, you're grabbing enemies, countering attacks, and using the environment in creative ways. There's a weight to every punch that makes street fights feel intense instead of chaotic. And then there's Hong Kong itself. The city doesn't feel empty or just decorative, it actually feels alive. Riding through neon-lit streets at night, switching between undercover missions and gang life, it all creates this cool dual identity for the character. You're constantly balancing who you are and who you're pretending to be. The story also hits harder than people expect. It's not just about crime and action, it's about loyalty, identity, and the pressure of living two lives at once. And that's what makes Sleeping Dogs stick with you long after you finish it. It's not loud or overhyped, but it's easily one of the most underrated open-world games ever made. Enslaved. Odyssey to the West is one of those games that most people completely missed, and honestly, that's a shame because it has a lot more heart than you'd expect from a post-apocalyptic action game. From the start, it drops you into a ruined world that feels both beautiful and dead at the same time, like nature slowly taking everything back. What really makes it stand out is the relationship between the two main characters. You're not just controlling a lone warrior, you're stuck with Trip, and that dynamic changes everything. She's not a fighter, you're not fully in control of the situation, and that forced teamwork creates moments that feel surprisingly real for a game like this. It's not just about action, it's about trust in a world where nobody should really trust anyone. The gameplay itself is simple, but smooth, mixing climbing, combat, and platforming in a way that keeps things moving without getting too complicated. It's not trying to overwhelm you with systems, it just focuses on experience and storytelling. and that actually works in its favor. But what sticks with you the most is the emotional tone. There's this quiet sadness running through everything, from the environments to the dialogue. It's not loud or dramatic, it's more subtle, and that's what makes it hit harder than expected. It's one of those games you finish and then just sit there thinking about for a bit. Outward is honestly one of the most underrated survival RPGs out there, and it doesn't even try to hide how harsh it is. From the very beginning, it makes one thing clear: you are not special in this world. No fast power progression, no easy wins, just pure survival and learning through mistakes. What makes it so different is how grounded everything feels. You're not just managing health and stamina, you're dealing with hunger, temperature, injuries, and even basic travel becomes a challenge. Leaving a city feels like an actual journey, not just a quick trip on a map. And if you mess up, the game doesn't baby you, it just keeps going. Combat is also very deliberate. It's slow, tactical, and punishes careless play immediately. Even simple fights can turn bad if you're not prepared, and that tension makes every encounter feel meaningful. But at the same time, when you do survive something tough, it actually feels like you earned it. And that's really what Outward is about. It's not trying to be flashy or heroic. It's about struggle, preparation, and learning how to survive in a world that doesn't care if you make it or not. It's rough around the edges, but that's exactly what gives it its identity, and why it deserves way more attention than it ever got.